Hey guys, this is Drew Thon to talk to you about how our Common Core standards were implemented in my school. A number of years, I think 3 years ago, here at our school, we started to implement what we call Common Core. When we did this, we developed a three-phase plan of implementing Common Core. The first phase went into effect, like I said, 3 years ago. And with this phase, what we did was we basically started the conversation talking about what Common Core was, how it would affect us, what us as classroom teachers would need to do to start to implement Common Core. We did this by focusing on strictly language arts, reading and writing. All classroom teachers implementing strategies to read and write in their classroom. The first phase, we implemented two strategies. First was the cold read and then second was the close read. We implemented cold and close read. We did this by PLCs. In our PLC time, we would have our literacy coaches come in and talk about how cold read and how close read were supposed to operate. There was some discussion about how effective that was. I was new at the time, newly back at the time, and I had to go to some other trainings on it as well. I was able to go to a number of different professional developments on it. So I feel like I picked up the strategy fairly well and understood the strategy fairly well. Some of the older teachers that only got PLC time, they don't feel like, a few of them don't feel like they picked up the strategy very well in that first phase. That was phase one, was cold read and close read. During that time of the first year, the first phase of it, we had to submit one cold read and one close read per semester for our principals to look at. We did it academy-wide, where we would give our cold read and our close read to our academy principals. Three different examples, one that was done well, one that was done okay, and one that was done poorly, so that they had an understanding of how this was being implemented. Phase two started last year. Phase two, the process was much the same. A lot of the process last year was just done during PLC time. I take that back. I did get a little bit of professional development time on that as well. The two strategies we implemented last year, we implemented argumentative writing, and we focused more on Quad D lessons last year than we did the first year. Argumentative writing, we adopted the 10-sentence argumentative writing format. I was able to attend professional development on that by the district. The district had opened up professional development, as well as getting it in our PLC time. The Quad D lessons, obviously the 4 different quads. The Quad D lessons, I was just able to get that during professional development. And for a while, there was a lot of confusion on exactly what registered as a Quad D lesson and what didn't register as a Quad D lesson. Over time, I think that became a little more clear, but the implementation in PLC may have been a little fuzzy and hazy to some people. Like I said, I was able to get a little more professional development in argumentative writing. I needed some release time, so I took some professional development through our district on argumentative writing. I'm a social studies teacher, so close read, cold read, and argumentative writing I use quite a bit. That was phase two. Again, most of that stuff was done during PLC. We started to talk about informational texts in phase two at the end of last year, and we've kind of transitioned into phase three, which this year is informational texts. Informational text as a social studies teacher is something that we've always kind of done, but what we're doing is we're implementing it as the same common practice school-wide and district-wide. That's kind of coming into effect now. We've slowed down a little bit on our implementation of Common Core because of all the other things going on. We've kind of slowed down. We're searching for a new principal. We had to find searching for a new superintendent. So those things kind of slowed down a little bit in the meantime. One thing I didn't talk about in the first phase, one thing that we did do is our district created a race strategy. They created a team of teachers and led by a couple lead teachers, and they created a strategy called our race strategy, and that's just a question answering strategy that we use where we restate the question. We answer the question completely in a complete sentence, and then we cite for evidence. We cite where we found the information for the answer. The next phase, we're kind of transitioning somewhat into a fourth phase. We haven't really touched math Common Core besides in math classes. The next kind of phase to this, the next step to this, is implementing math into every classroom, just like we've implemented reading and writing into every classroom. There's some teachers in our district do not feel like it was implemented very well. In my academy, I feel like it was implemented fairly well to where I could understand it. It also did take me some time, some professional development time outside of school and outside of our PLCs to get comfortable using some of these Common Core strategies. Some things that I would change in implementing Common Core. One thing that I've noticed, we do ask for evidence. The school principals do ask for evidence. Every semester we give our principals a couple cold reads, a couple closed reads, how we're using race strategy, Quad D lesson plans. We give them our informational text writing. We give them our argumentative text writing. So they do ask for that stuff. Sometimes I feel like maybe we should review some of our work in our PLC time and see exactly what went well with our implementation of each strategy, what didn't go well. If I were to do it, I think I would implement it a little slower, I guess would be the one thing that I would do. Cold and closed read, those were the two easiest, so we kind of started with our closed read and our cold read and started implementing our race strategy. Where things started to get hazy and confusing a little bit was with Quad D lessons, and that's kind of a big deal in our district, a big deal in our school. I think that maybe we should have spent a little more time and spent a little more in-service time on Quad D lessons and just reviewing the process of how everything is supposed to be developed in a Quad D, what exactly a Quad D is. Because I think from academy to academy, we have 4 different academies. If you went into each academy, the answer may be a little bit different. There's no real fluidity to everybody seeing the same thing. So that may be one thing I would change is how we implement it. The other thing, and we have actually tried doing that this year, is implementing an alternative calendar. An alternative calendar for Common Core for implementing these strategies would be great because you could use, and we were looking at giving afternoons off on Fridays and using that time as PLC time. Currently in our PLCs, I'm in our freshman academy. I meet with half of the freshman teachers. The other half of the freshman teachers meet 5th period with an alternative calendar to where everybody's off the last part of Friday. Not only could I meet with all the freshman teachers and work something in a Quad D lesson in for everybody to implement together, we could also start implementing things across our curriculum, across social studies, across math. Right now, as a social studies teacher, I only see our other social studies teachers about once every month and a half. So I don't see them very often. So we have a hard time aligning our curriculum all the way through so that we know exactly who's teaching what when they're teaching it. So that would be a couple of the things I would change. Like I said, some people feel like maybe Common Core wasn't implemented very well. I feel fairly comfortable with it, but it did take me a lot of extra professional development time to get that comfort with it. So that's Common Core where I'm at. Drew, Thon, thanks a bunch.